Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to welcome Art McCoy, please.
As they get me set up, I want to say good morning, everyone. Let's say that again. Let's wake up a little bit. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. That sounds much better. It's a pleasure to be with you. I want to start by recognizing a few key people that are here and in the audience. Thank you. Appreciate it. Without whom I wouldn't be who I am. And first, I had to start with my sister, Rosalind McCoy. She's here. Wave and raise your hand. My beautiful sister, Roz. Also, a person who's been instrumental in the development of myself, Tom George. He was here this morning, and if you're still around, stand up, Tom, great friend. He's the Chancellor of the University of Missouri St. Louis. A new leader to the area, someone that I'm excited about just meeting today, and he's going to do great things. He's overseeing one of the largest institutions for educating minorities in the region, and that is the new Chancellor of the St. Louis Community College, Jeff Pittman. Stand up, Jeff. Great to see you. And I have with me my two colleagues from the Mind Research Institute, both of whom are not from St. Louis, who traveled a long way to be here with us, both Beth Garrett and James. If you would stand up and wave, thank you for your support. My goal is to speak to you today and to give you three things at least, and that is some information in the next 30 minutes or so, and then there'll be a time for questions afterwards. A little bit of inspiration, just a little bit, and then lastly, a charge for innovation. So some information, quite a bit of information, some inspiration, and a charge for innovation. And that's the key. And my first slide, I usually start with, I'm gonna start with that second. And first, to just inform you about kind of the state of education. And I love the quote that Joe started off with about education pointing you in the right direction. So I've done this with over 100,000 students, mostly kindergartners through 12th graders. You'll be shocked because of the lack of success with this simple test that I start off with. This is almost insulting to your age and intellect to start off with this question. But can you and will you point up? Can you and will you point up? You have 10 seconds. All right. We had about 95% successfully do that, and it was only because of a will gap, not a skill gap. Can you and will you point north? Take about 10 seconds. That's amazing. Now, clearly, we're with a bunch of architects, construction workers. Clearly, it took you not one word. I promise you, I've done this with over 100,000 people, and it takes 3 minutes, and usually everyone depends on what's presumed to be the smartest person in the room. And then they look around and they say, whatever he says, I'm gonna do it. 10% of people point up still. That's just reality. And I'm talking from K through 12, but also some college students. And then others, like myself, use a compass before they get here to make sure that they know what they're talking about. This group, with 100% success in less than 3 seconds, all knew that north was that direction. You, I'm gonna start off with informing you, are rare in the case of adults in general. If anybody's married to someone that says, I'm directionally challenged, and says, just use GPS, but you're definitely rare in the education landscape where only 30% of children in school have any clue of what it takes of perceptual awareness, orientation, knowing where they are with respect to something else like Highway 70 or Highway 40, which is right out there, and seeing themselves in respect to that. That is the problem. In the end of what you hear me share is that education is shifting from just the context of reading out of a book and regurgitating what you've been told to contextual knowledge. And that's the key to opening up the field into construction industries and other STEM industries for our youth today. For the second quick exercise, I want you to, with your elbow partner next to you, take about 20 seconds to give a one-word description about how the world has changed in the last 13 years. You take about 30 seconds with your elbow partner to talk about how you view that the world has changed, and then I'm going to get some shout-outs from you. All right, let's get some one-word shout-outs for how the world has changed. You can either shout out loud or raise your hand. I can come with the mic. How has the world changed in the last 13 years, or even less? So shout that out.
Technology.
That's a huge one. Technology, yes.
Terrorism.
Terrorism, huge. And did you notice the picture there? That's New York.
Injustice.
Injustice. The world has changed to injustice, for sure, for sure. And maybe it's been consistently unjust, but more transparent even. The transparency of it, for sure. Yes, sir, shout it out loud. Ooh, that's a good one. I gotta give you the mic. Yeah, it's so true. Polarization, that is a top one for futurists and educators.
Globalization.
Globalization, perfect. You guys are brilliant, brilliant. Any others?
Information.
Say it louder.
Information.
Information, that's awesome. That's exactly right. Social media, beautiful, beautiful. Exactly right. Any others? Yes. Thank you, my good friend. Transparency. All these things are true. Any other burning ones? Yes, sir. Say that, I'm gonna give you the mic, because that's true. I heard you, but I want you to hear it. Simply smaller. Simply smaller. Everything is simply smaller. That is so true. The world is flat. Thomas Friedman. Interconnectivity. Any other last burning ones? How has the world changed? Morality. Ooh. I won't be saying much about that one today. Thank you, David. Yes, that is true.
Radical.
Radical, yes. Tied to morality for certain, but everything's in reconstruction. Yes. Medium, fast, speed, that's huge. I'm going to be hitting on most of those things. And even the fact that morality is included is an indication of reconstruction. We're all in construction. The world is being reconstructed. Fields are being reconstructed. Education, lives, morals, homes, families. And I will give some of that. For instance, it's been a while, but the bottom line is 60% of marriages end in divorce. For African Americans, it's been something, unfortunately, rising with regard to single parent homes. Now at an alarming rate for me, 79% single family homes, mostly female, ran by grandparents. All of this is an indication for a need for reconstruction. It's not just black families, but also white families on an all-time high for not having the same supports that many of us grew up with. If I were to say, raise your hand if you grew up in a two-parent home, by show of hands. Okay, well, let's stop there. We're preaching to the choir. So this audience, I can go through a litany of things that are being reconstructed because of the lifestyle and the world that the youth are living in today is quite different, as we all know. you hit it on the head with regard to all your points. Here's one quick example. This is a picture of Dubai 15 years ago on the top, where you see barren land and about 3 hotels, and now on the bottom, since we're in construction, with a large mega city. I can show you Shanghai, and you'll see something similar to that effect. That indicates the amount of growth and expansion in our world for commerce, for speed, for the need for power, for the need for injustices to be made just, for more voices at the table, more women being educated, especially in other countries, so forth and so on. I was just at the Muni last night seeing the Holiday Inn quite late, till about 11, surprising. And here's another indication of change. If that was in 2005, it would have been just like that, people looking at the show. But this is what I saw, especially when the crowd loved something. Everybody took out their phone and their camera and they put it on some social media because it was great, hilarious, and they wanted to capture the moment. It's not enough that they're sitting next to their significant other, spouse, child, or maybe divorced spouse since that rates are so high. But nonetheless, they wanted their circle outside of that influence to see it. Technology, you hit it on the head when you said that. Here's a snapshot of social media changes. This was, how many of you remember actually having a desk without those indicators? Just about 20 years ago, a desk like that, with a phone that actually had a dial or some kind of mechanism that you touch that's not digital. All those things, pencil paper, actual Rolodex, all of those have been replaced. I'm a LinkedIn champion. Tom said, first thing he said to me, I know you love social media, so you're gonna put something up on LinkedIn, and something up on Facebook, and something up on your Twitter. And yes, the short answer is the world has changed in these ways, where we replace all of our former objects with some sort of faster, more transparent method to reach more people and to do more faster. This change has disrupted our suburbs for sure. The term disrupted suburbs is a new one that's coming forward. This is from a futurist site called Knowledge Works, but it's very instrumental. It's not so far into the future that you can't really predict it. We're talking 5 to 10 year future timelines. This change and shifts in everything being reconstructed has caused for suburbs to be disrupted. As in the case of Michael Brown, something that was a typical experience in many places, but not typical in the place that it occurred, which disrupted the view of what is reality, what is normal, what is right, what is wrong, and then prompted actions. That is the new norm. Cities, rural populations, those are also categories of high-need environments today. To be equipped to do what we all in here aim to do and what the mission of the construction forum for education aims to do, these places, both rural and the city, right above each other, are ill-equipped to solve the problem, if not for the things that we do right here. The last one that we don't talk enough about is the prison population. Being that the United States has the most amount of incarcerated citizens out of all industrial civilized nations, all, and that's not a black thing or a white thing, it's an all thing. We are losing a lot of our innovation and a lot of our workforce by virtue of them being behind bars and forgotten about, and most of them leave those bars and come back into society ill-equipped, if not worse equipped. From the education standpoint, I'll say this. 75% of third graders across the nation read below their grade level. So they read in the second grade or first grade or kindergarten or not at all. 75%. 70% of the incarcerated juveniles read at that same grade level, and they're usually in their 14s or above. 80% of incarcerated individuals read at the third grade level. So my rule for being a great educator was to close jail cells and not have it be a correlation between that third grader and the reading ability towards an adult's reading ability. Now, a good statistician would say there is not causation in the correlation. It's not because they don't read well that they go to jail, but the fact is that if you read well, you have fewer reasons to do illegal things, to make means, and to make a way to provide and to just survive. Because maybe you can read the sign that says, don't break this law, whatever law is, a noise ordinance or whatever. So closing jail cells, but also equipping people in jail is critical. Staying on track for how the world is changing. All those things are changes that we're now living in. However, 60% of our schools still look like 1955 in the classroom. If you go into many schools today, you will still see desks and rows. You will still see a teacher as the sage on the stage. That's why I'm not standing on the stage. And just spitting out just stuff that has little relevance, little value, little connection. The question is, do I see myself as a child in what you're telling me, in what you're showing me? And so I had to put down there, is that 1955 or is that 2015? Some schools have replaced the teacher with the model teacher, pun intended, a model teacher. And I know this is not an education conference, but nonetheless, you have some good-hearted people who bring in people for mission-oriented initiatives like Teach for America. Good-hearted, beautiful, young people who want to make a difference. And they often look like that, and the kids eat them alive. Eat them alive. Spit out the bones. You see articles about it. Other schools get a smart board. We all know what that is because we're in the STEM industry for technology, but very few of them know how to use it, so they still stand in front of the class and stage in front of the smart board as opposed to Blackboard, and students are still often not engaged enough in too many of our schools. And the overall process for what we're at and trying to get at with a pathway for prosperity and for more youth to become who you are, and that is leaders in your industry or entry workers. The system has a Swiss cheese approach where you hit and you miss. There are holes in the learning, even of what's taught. There are holes. There's holes in the system. Kids fall through those gaps. And they end up looking like this in classrooms where they're disengaged. Some of the reasons, here's a high school picture. Actual picture. It's like, why would you allow this as a teacher? But nonetheless, what does this convey? Someone came and did all the work and it wasn't them. When the system was constructed, it didn't have the same intensity in mind that we need, which we're going to talk about. And that I'm very pleased to be in this institution, which is not only the sheet metal shop for Local 36, but it's also a school, which is right next to this. That is purposeful. That's the wave of the future. I talked about reading. Let me show you why that number can be true. Can you read this paragraph? Let's go on the count of three. I want you to try to read it. 1, 2, 3. According to research at University, doesn't matter. All right, about 80% of you got through that. So you all now are certifiably crazy. You all are. 1970 system would say you're all, you're crazy. 1980 system, you're LD, learning disability. 2000 system, you just are language deprived, haven't been exposed to a rich environment. But you made it through the paragraph. And every day, students fake it until they make it out of the scene of embarrassment. I was a student like this that read like this, not because of anything psychological, but because of a lack of just exercise and focus at the effort. And it took grit, it took perseverance, it took someone knowing that that's how I saw some things, and it took intentionality to move past that. and now I'm able to move much past that. Here's the math statistics, and I don't like just giving statistics, I like making it real, just like you have a real understanding about how some kids see words because of a lack of exposure. Here's a math example, because math is a major barrier to students being in construction as well as in STEM industries. Those charts just simply show that in 4th grade, over 50% are either basic or below basic in 2013, and in 8th grade, close to 60% are in the same situation, and it gets worse. So 58% in 4th grade perform below proficiency in math. 86% of black 8th graders are below proficiency in math. Algebra is the gatekeeper still in high school. If you can't pass that, you can't get into the courses that we create that give you a pathway to the fields that we do. 93% of 12th graders, black 12th graders, are below proficiency in math. 50% of 7th and 8th graders fail math first time. And therefore, 2% of, like for instance, teachers are black males. That's an issue because if you don't look like someone and you see someone that never looks like you, then you may not be able to see yourself in that role. 50% of STEM jobs don't require a bachelor's degree. And so that means that we have to capture this between kindergarten and 14th grade and sometimes 12th grade. That's why I'm glad we had the Knowledge and Community College, because they're partnered with making those courses available for high school students. But let me make it more real. Here's another practice question. This is a 3rd grade question, and I'm curious to see if you get this right, because out of asking about 100,000 people, only about 50 have gotten the right answer the first time. So listen carefully. 3rd grade level question in math. You're driving a bus, and at the first stop, you pick up 5 people. At the second stop, you pick up 4 people. Third stop, 3 people. Then 2 people, and then 1 person at the last stop. Question is, how many people are on the bus? Take about 5 seconds. You guys are quick, so you're very good. In like 2 seconds, you got that. In 2 seconds. So if by show of hands, let me give you multiple choice just in case someone was still thinking. If you think the answer is 15, raise your hand. And you pick up 5 people, 4 people, 3 people, 2 people, 1 person. How many people are on the bus? If you think the answer is 15, show of hands, 15, 1, 5. All right. If you think the answer is 16, show of hands. Okay? And if you have a different answer than 16, show of hands, different answer than 16. Okay, all right, so those of you that said 15, I'm gonna say right now, 15 is not the answer. Somebody raise their hand for 16 over here. Why was it 16? Because of the driver. Because you have to add the driver, right? All right, we have something other than 16 and 15.
It's 15 because you're remote driving it from Dubai.
Good, you got a drone. That's good, that's good. So we got 15 and 16 as a consensus. Anybody with some number other than 15 or 16? 1 person over here. All right, make sure we get it. Yes, sir. I want to hear that answer. Yes, sir. It's not loud.
I don't believe you stated how many people started on the bus.
That's exactly right. So 50%. So today in class, 50% of the people would say, 58% would say it's 15 people, which is not right at all, unless you have a drone bus. But still would not be totally right. About 90% of your 12th graders would say 16, but that would be wrong because we didn't establish how many people were on the bus when you started. And so effectively in this audience, 1 person got it right. And in today's Common Core initiative was to be practical, to say the answer is greater than or equal to 16 and justify why. Because you have a driver, because you could have had the driver's child, you could have had some amount of kids on the bus before you started. And that is a practical application to a 3rd grade question, which is what's being required for every child across America, regardless of what the state board says we screw Common Core because it's an Obama initiative or whatever. It doesn't matter. You need to keep it real, keep it relevant, and keep it something that's in front of the child's face to justify every second. And 90% of our kids can't even do the old style of math right in 12th grade. 93% at grade level, not to mention a practical, relevant example. This is the reason why construction, carpentry, metal work is almost impossible if it's been textbook all day with the right answer, but now all of a sudden you have equipment, machines, and a right angle that has to stand up correctly with something called true right versus, geometrically right. There is a difference like more people being on the bus because you started there. So, getting to solving these systems, this is something that I've led education systems, and it will not happen fast enough with a superintendent principal. I see Philip Boyd here as assistant superintendent of Jennings, awesome district with great leadership, and even they can't do it alone. They're applauded for bringing up achievement rates for students in need by 10%, 20%. That's never happened before. When we're in reality, their students and others need to come up by 80% because the bar is high. The only way that will happen is by a charge for you to get engaged with a school somewhere, everywhere, to make a learning ecosystem where there are relationships between the learning agents, that means who's learning, the student, the people who are teaching the students. So a relationship with the educators, with the learners, with the things that they use to learn, the equipment, the assets, and the specific social, economic, and geographic context. Because to do that in St. Louis is simple. We just come here, we just go to Wells Fargo, get that for there. But to do that in Kirksville, to do that in the Boot Heel, there is nothing 60 miles around you. It's gonna take some creativity, some technology, and some real intentionality. But the goal is justice and transparency, but in these words, to be student-centered, learner-centered, to center on what the world needs from the students, but also where they are and how to take them further, to make it equitable, so it's at those populations that don't have it and that need it most, to give according to the level of need, and that it's modular or interoperable, that it can be shifted in and out like a jigsaw puzzle to fill in that Swiss cheese hole pattern that I showed you within the system. And it has to be resilient. Resilient meaning adjusting. I'll tell you some stories about resilience, I guess now, because I don't want to belabor the issue. John Gall, who's in the room, a brother of mine who works with the Carpenters Union, we started a program that, frankly, from Harvest Pathways to Prosperity, we started in Ferguson, of all places, at McCoy High School. On the note of resilience, he started it somewhere else before it came to us, and it failed because of a lack of resilience on the system's part internally. He then came to me to say, hey, this is what I learned from the last place, we need this, we need a carpentry program. Kids need math skills to get into it, we need to recruit kids, we need to have actual industry people be the teachers. Had to get through some of the guidelines. I'm happy to have Gail Stewart, the Assistant Commissioner for DESE here. She helped us with regards to understanding career pathways, getting a teacher with a certification and an industry person, a carpenter, co-teaching the classes to make it work. And John just shared with me that 3 of the students from what was started 3 years ago or so are now fully employed as carpenters from a creative program with you, your help, your technology, in a place based off of needs. Some of the needs included the fact that we had two I guess you could call them tornadoes that came through the area. If you recall, devastated some of Pattonville School District right down Highway 270 and some of my school district, and we didn't have enough carpenters to replace houses and people were abandoning houses. So the social context, the social need, the program, and equipping students. Some of this data here that I'm going to show you, I'm going to really whip through fastly because you should know it. And that is that the construction industry makes up about 4% of the St. Louis industrial employment industry. Here are the other areas around there. Our economy is, we have about 2.8 million people, and 1.3 million are employed. Our unemployment rate has gone down by 20,000 within the last 2 years, and it's at 5.5% here in the metropolitan area, those cities right above. And our GDP is at $146 billion. right now as a region. In comparisons to the United States, that's really on par with the averages of a low unemployment nationwide. This is the information section. The unemployment rate in the United States has dropped to as of April 2015, the red line, 5.1. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I'm looking at these indicators because of a report called the State of St. Louis Workforce report that community college did 3 years ago. I just updated all the data points and I'm comparing the two. For the industry of construction, from 2014 to 2015, there's been a 0.5% decrease in the amount of people employed. So there's 58,000 people employed in that, and that's 0.5% less than this time last year. However, it's important to note, skip past the degree attainment, that, go back to some of that, that construction is in the top 5 industries that are going to grow in the next, between now and 2020, the next 5 years. The demand is growing. It's in the top 5 of the long-term training programs that may include an associate's degree or certificate to do so. And there are the growth openings projected, 2,000 jobs. And as I see our website through the form, I see 200 to 300 job postings every day. So it's showing that in this local area that is exactly true. The other 2 areas are home care services, healthcare, and information. If I were to go back, here are the certifications for the St. Louis Community College, and we're missing something from there on forklifting. Says no program related to that, but there's a need for that. And you can go through some others like commercial, like the driver's license, and a few others. So as we look at this as educators, and I think as a superintendent, what it just says is we have to partner with you in order to get some of the on-job training, but to put that in our high schools so that seniors and juniors can have access to it through job shadowing, through apprenticeships, through some type of dual credit, some type of course creation. Because here are the 30 certificates that's in greatest demand in our community right now, and there are some holes in our industry with regards to helping to equip students to be prepared. The bottom line is our education system relevant? And it will only be if you drive what we do. I believe in a reconstructionist model of education. That means the system of education should mirror what the needs of society are and be used for that purpose. That's the philosophical definition of a reconstructionist education view. And for mathematics, real quickly, the construction industry itself is changing. This is a Labor Bureau Statistics report that shows that construction and abstraction occupations now in 2020 will only go up to 95% of what it was in 2006 when we had the big boom in real estate construction. And the rest of it will be supplanted by computer and mathematical occupations, things that are more technical, more transparent, more digitized, even in the construction roles. It's a matter of shifting for efficiency, shifting for more, for less. Making things smaller, making departments smaller, organizations smaller, but doing equal, if not more work in that grid. This is straight from the Bureau of Statistics projections. 130% of the employment of 2006 in the biggest boom, but with transfers to computer and mathematical based occupations or technology usage. So because of that, this is the new future of education. And because this isn't an educational conference per se, I'm not going to go over every one. I'm just going to say that the changes in providing an ecosystem of learning, that means schools will look different, like we're in a school right now. And that's very hard for us that went to a regular school that looked like 1955. But this is a school, and that's the new norm. How you get certificates and degrees and certifications will come through multiple places, multiple ways, multiple partnerships, and that is the new norm. That's the only way to immediately and quickly, with speed, as we mentioned, the world has changed, to make this happen within a relatively short period of time, 1-2 years. This is a picture of one of our programs, gaming programs from the Mind Research Institute that teaches kids how to point up and how to point north. It starts with a penguin that's upside down, like, you know, you can see him through a glass window standing or her on his side. And the question is, orient the penguin to get right side up and facing out the door. And having them immediately guess how to do so. And training a first grader to know orientation from that early, to begin to, nothing's innate or very few things, and so this is a skill that must be developed. And then we have 50,000 other games that takes them from this conceptual learning through a game, and they eat it up. We had 7,000 kids learning this type of thing on Christmas Day, out of the 1 million kids that we have using it across the nation, 1 million in 40 states. But it's practical, it's in their hands, and it's starting to teach them what every one of you did in 3 seconds, and they can't do at all. And it's hard to verbalize. You try going home with your parent and telling your child how you pointed north. Just ask them, point north, and see if they get it right. And then try to explain to them how you did it. And it's quite difficult. And even if you use the words to explain it, it doesn't mean that they receive it. It has to be reiterated through what we have to do so. We have over 50,000 different applications that are practical, that get kids on the pathway. This is what they look like once they finally get it. They're like, I got it, it's hard. It's just life. Life is going to be 10 times harder if you don't get this. And this is the beginning towards kids sitting in your seat 15 years from now. Otherwise, they won't be there. And especially kids that are brown, like the Latino next to them, female, like the female next to her. It takes hard work to be a CEO of a STEM company, but it starts with grit, perseverance, coaches. The best quote, my friend Joe quoted Plato. I'm a philosophy major. I wanted to quote Du Bois just to even it out. When an individual becomes suddenly conscious of their tremendous powers lying latent within him or her, then from a puzzled contemplation of a half-known self, he rises to the powerful assertion of that self, conscious of their might, and then loosed upon the world is good that makes men and women pause. That's what that signifies. And it starts with trickles of good that make themselves pause, and then they continue on that path of good. So you see First Robotics here, which I saw a First Robotics person here wave your hand. He came up, there it is. This is kids engaged with robotics in elementary school, 5th grade, time tinkering on the stuff that Lowe's creates. I saw a Lowe's person in here. I had 30 students at Emerson taking apart your product that unclogs pipes that go 35 feet. They were taking it apart and putting it back together again, but taking it apart to figure out how it worked and then how to make it cheaper for Emerson Electric. And they were all community college, St. Louis Community College kids. And that was time for them to tinker on how to make things more cost efficient, how to make things that are cheaper for the consumer, how to, as an engineer, make it work. And of course, Emerson makes a lot of the parts in that very device. And it starts this early with them starting to think critically that way. So learning by doing is the method. Critical thinking, teamwork engaged, so you should get soft skills. If the schools aren't doing this, then they're not modeling and mirroring what you need, and they will be behind when you hire them and you have to remediate them. But also early college and CTE, career pathways, career technical education has to be more important. Rebranding, to be cool, to be a lifeline. I don't even like it just being cool, it's a lifeline. If you don't know it, you won't be employed in ways that you should be and could be employed. Mind Research has a STEM fair that's very similar to First Robotics, where we engage 5,000 kids at a time in all of these same things. We're doing it at the Navy Pier on the 26th of September. We need, of course, students, which we have coming in, but also sponsors to bring what you do to the table so they can tinker with it, play with it, see it, understand it, know that you're there, and start to think about being in your jobs when you retire 20 years from now, or as your apprenticeship today. And this is what the school classroom looks like when it's doing those things well. It looks like inquiry, where kids are inquiring, group projects, As the gentleman mentioned, someone driving the bus remotely, a teacher teaching a class remotely, or from a video, flipped learning, where they learn it at a different class time, home time, use some of the leisure time, and then come to school to do the project work together. And if you don't have a safe environment or a clean environment, research-rich environment at home with a laptop, computer, quiet, an adult, then have a facility in the library, a facility in a business place, a facility at a community center, at a YMCA that facilitates a remote educator with flipped learning and some project-based skills and shadowing. Learning by inquiry and projects. And then there's learning by working, which I love the most. I had to let the secret out the bag, so I had David ask me, how can we help individuals access $10 million towards the STEM industry, and construction in particular, at the high school level and beyond? How can we educate them to do that? And a lot of you want to know the same thing. These 5 things were our keys, and I know when I mentioned this to Gail, her eyes got big 3 years ago, starting with the bottom 2. So JAG is Jobs for America's Graduates. It's a high school course that allows you to teach whatever your business does, the soft skills and the hard skills, as a high school 12th grade class, 11th grade class. And then it's funded by business, so private funds and some government funds. We had about 300 students in the JAG program, 100 kids in each of my high schools. Then you add WIA to that, Workforce Investment Act, which was stimulus funding used to employ kids. The St. Louis Community College hired someone who's now their intern president at Forest Park, Roger Nunn. He used to work for Governor Blunt. He managed creating the WIA program here in Missouri way back then, and it's still funds available. But WIA employs youth from 16 or older for $8 to $10 an hour to come work at your organizations without your money being spent. And so that's like free labor for hand-picked kids if you just coordinate the who, the how with the teachers in the school system from the CTE departments, and then add a class for curriculum that makes it timely task for the school's needs. That also can be manifested through job shadowing. Most schools require community service for kids to graduate, so make it relevant. Apprenticeships where they can get paid to do it beyond what I mentioned with WIA and JAG, and internships, which I described with the Missouri Collegiate Fellows Program, where we had 30 kids at Emerson working on a Lowe's product from St. Louis Community College just this summer out of Marvin Tier's Office of Engagement in light of Governor Nixon's response to Mike Brown's loss of life. That program was created. Strange, but true story. But that's all about learning by working. So in short, the charge is to form more partnerships. That's place-based learning. Because education consortiums, employment consortiums will expand job mobility in struggling, disruptive suburbs. That's the term that will be mentioned over and over in the future and the present. So I close with saying, 13 years ago as I started, when today's high school seniors started school, Facebook wasn't an app, but a directive that we told our students, put your face in those books. Twitter was still only a sound that a bird made. The cloud was only for the skies. 4G was my parking space in Chicago at a hotel. LinkedIn was an image of a guy behind bars, chained to links. Applications were what you sent to universities for job interests. And Skype was just a typo. But in 2003, a small team created LinkedIn, which I'm now on the West Coast near them, that included the same creators of PayPal, of SocialNet, and Reid Hoffman, who's another entrepreneur. In 2004, Mark Zuckerberg created with some others Facebook. And 2 years later, another team created Twitter that created the place for 140 characters, sound bites, and hooks. So it's plain to see that one need can set off a chain reaction. One life can spark a national passion.
or reaction. One project can alter reality. One project. This very school right next to here started with an idea that came into reality. One teacher can help scores of students have a new mentality. And never forget that professionals and citizens like yourself, you matter to each student, and you help each student matter as they start to mirror you. One idea can change the world forever, and mentoring, corporate partnerships, place-based learning, they will all create new CTE, new career technical education, career pathway endeavors. And then and only then together can we equip our youth for work and brighter days in the 21st century and truly reconstruct society. Thank you for your time.
So thank you, Art, for speaking. And we ran a little bit along on time, but Art has graciously said that he would hang around and answer any questions that people have. So if you have a question about the presentation, please feel free to come up and talk to Art, and he'll try to answer it for you. Thank you.